2020 has been a wild year. We started off strong with forest fires and talk of World War III. We got hit with a virus called COVID-19, but we didn't handle that quite well enough. So now we're living in a pandemic that has robbed us of toilet paper, high school and college graduations, and one of the hottest summers that I can remember. Murder hornets were reported to be invading people's homes and killing people, and aliens were proven to be real. 2020 has been absolutely mad and has brought about change that I don't believe anybody was ready for, especially myself. As a lot of you may know, I was born and primarily raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania, home of coal and the office. But Scranton has never really felt like a home to me. My family and I moved back to Scranton after living with my grandparents in the country. We moved back to the area because a group of mixed girls going to school in a predominantly white area that has never seen a black person before was detrimental to our self-esteem. So we moved back to Scranton, and my mother has lived here ever since. I can't remember a time where I felt included in Scranton or felt welcome at all, really. But going to school here and growing up here, I love to be involved in anything and everything that I can be involved in. Extracurricular activities, clubs, sports teams, you name it, I was either doing at school or at home. I was a really bright, fun-loving child, and I never thought that would change until I lost my best friend in 3rd grade. Now, when I say lost, I don't mean that she died. I mean that she moved across the country to North Carolina. But it felt like she did. And the grief and loneliness that came with losing someone that important and that close to me really changed the way I thought of not only myself, but of the people in the world around me. Bullies started to get to me. I no longer thought my curly hair was pretty, and I started to think twice about the way I acted and the way I was as a person and just in class as a whole. I was one of the smartest kids in my class, but I was still targeted and bullied by my 3rd grade teacher. I'm not kidding when I tell you this. My mother actually had to come into my class and force her to apologize to me because I would go home every day crying. But in her defense, I was a needy child, and her way of helping me was by toughening me up with passive insults and quieting my curiosity. This affected me for years later. I spent a lot of time questioning who I was and who I wanted to be. So when we moved schools and moved houses, I decided that I was going to be somebody else. I told myself that I was going to be a cool girl. I was going to wear short skirts and flats because that's what the boys liked. And if the boys liked you, you were cool and everybody wanted to be your friend. I started participating in games I didn't enjoy and let people touch me in a way that made me uncomfortable. Because if you were a cool girl that the boys liked, everybody wanted to be you and be your friend, which made you a good girl in the eyes of authority and teachers, because you were well-liked and you were unproblematic. So being a cool girl plus a good girl, therefore, made you a smart girl. Because smart girls got ahead in life. Smart girls were well accepted, fit in everywhere they went, and loved by everyone. And the only way you can be successful in life or get ahead was to be a smart girl. And that's what I believed, and that's what I was told. Now, when you spend a lot of your life pretending to be something that you're not, it really wears on your mind and who you believe to be who you are, and becomes hard to pretend. I always had an idea of who I was and who I wanted to be. I just didn't know that I could be that person and still be happy, loved, and accepted. So, as you can see, that didn't last long. Now, a lot of us grow up with expectations. I know I did, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. And if I wasn't being pressured by students and authority, I was being pressured by my relatives and my own choices. I didn't realize my anxieties until I reached high school and everything became too overwhelming and just too much for me to handle. So I decided that I wanted to move states, and I moved to Syracuse, New York. I was lured to Syracuse with promises of a happier life and overall just change. I spent my remaining years of high school homeless, abandoned and traumatized by domestic and verbal abuse. I was reminded on the regular how worthless I was, and constantly reminded by people who claimed to love me that I didn't offer much and that I should end my life. That was a really hard, negative time for me in my life, and probably one of the worst decisions I've ever made. But without that experience, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And this way of thinking I had to train myself to obtain. I struggle with bipolar, PTSD, and ADHD. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago, and ever since, I've been doing everything in my power to take control of my life and my choices. Because I spent a lot of my life believing that I was hopeless, crazy, and undeserving, because that's what I was told. I just want you to know that if you're still navigating your mental health journey or you're finding things out about yourself that you think is wrong or okay, your mental health does not define you. Your mental illness does not mean that you're any less worthy than anybody else. You just have to try 100 times harder to be okay. And that's perfectly fine. If anything, it just makes you a stronger person and even more worthy, and at the end of the day, even more successful. A lot of us don't know this, though, because we live in a society that tells us that if we don't play it safe and keep it cool and be normal, we won't be successful. I spent a lot of my life believing this to be true. But at the end of the day, the life that I live now is a life that I chose. The life I have currently and the way I am is for me and not for anybody else. Because at the end of the day, what matters the most is how you feel accepted, how you feel the most welcome, and what makes you feel the most okay. And after all of that, I still made it on this stage, and I'm here today to tell you that you've got this. As I've said, I've been homeless, screwed over, beaten, I've self-harmed, I've attempted suicide on a few occasions, and I've been lost. And I've still made it to this stage to come here and tell all of you guys about how you can still make long-lasting, effective change, not only in your own life, but in lives of others as well in your community. This summer, I made it my job to be educated and to educate others about the world around me. Now, when I say educated, I don't mean in the way of textbooks and certificates. I mean educated in the way of shared experiences, controversy, and human choice. I attended many protests this summer. The first one I actually attended was in Scranton, and no more than 100 or so people showed up. But from having that experience and hearing everybody's stories, it really made me realize that a lot of the things that I could relate to weren't just happening to me, it was happening to everyone else. I started to think outside of my own problems and thought that if I've been working on myself for the past 2 years and doing my best, the best I can, then I can help others do the same. I attended any protest within a 2-hour radius of Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton, Bloomsburg, Wilkes-Barre, Honesdale, the list goes on. I collaborated on protest events with other Northeastern PA leaders and groups in the area. And before I had realized it, I had created a name for myself. I was now recognized as a leader in the community. People started to recognize me when I went out, positive and negative reactions there. I was being reached out to for interviews and to make appearances, to talk places, and being approached by people to tell me about how I had a positive change on their life, or made them look at things differently, or inspire them to push and stand strong in their beliefs. Thus came about Creating Change for the People. Creating Change for the People is a grassroots community organization that I founded this year. It was founded and is primarily led by myself, but I work alongside with a handful of other people, volunteers that are pretty consistent in the process of the things that we do. Over the past few months, we've held mutual aid drives, collected food and clothing donations, giving it to the community for free. We've held free educational workshops, ranging from gender and sexuality to the prison industrial complex. We do the best we can with what we've got and who we've got, and so far, I'd say we've done pretty damn good. You don't need money, power, or an education to create long-lasting, effective change, but what you do need is love and understanding. Not only for yourself and the things that you go through on the regular, but love and understanding for other people and their experiences, whether or not you can relate. Because either way, those things are happening and those things are just as important. I didn't think that I would live to be 22 years old. Nor did I think that I would be 22 years old having done everything I've done and still doing the things that I do now. But I am, and I did. I contemplated many ways on how I wanted to do this talk. I experimented with poetry, spoken word, facts, the list goes on. But at the end of the day, I realized that the best way that I can make long-lasting effective change is to come up here and expose my flaws and my struggles, to show that you are not alone and you can do anything. Because at the end of the day, the only support system that you really need is yourself and your willpower to do so. You don't need an education to create long-lasting effective change, and you sure as hell don't need to be like anybody else. Thank you.